motherfucking Sam, stupid continual hopping idea. In celebration of Dogfish Head's 30th anniversary, we are going to build an homage to the OG continual hopping device. There was this awesome store back in the late 20th century that was like a Salvation Army store on Route 1 where all the local farmers would drop off their old flannel shirts and army pants. In fact, I think these very pants are a pair that I got at that store. But the coolest thing I got at that store was that day I remembered in the corner of that store on the dusty toy shelf was a version of this game, the famous Tudor vibrating football game. And I had an idea to bring this back and let this be the centerpiece, the platform for the original Dogfish Head continual hopping device. So as you can see, we're using common like wood clamps. And on top, we basically just sawed the exact size that we wanted for 2x4s with like an open lane down the middle of the two 2x4s. And that's where the magic's gonna happen with the hops. So once we had the right platform devised for the continual hopping device, then it came down to figuring out the ideal container and hop moving system. And it really started with old school plastic bucket, basically drilling the right diameter of holes into the bucket, identifying the most quintessentially pungently piney and citrusy Northwest hop varieties that we had in pelletized form once we got it down onto the platform. So there were really three critical variables that we had to dial in to make sure it would continue to hop smoothly for the whole 90 minutes of the boil. I mentioned the first one was getting right the dimensions of the holes in the front of the bucket. The second one was actually the level of the pelletized hops that went into the bucket. If you went too low, it would just not be consistent. But if you went too high, the compacted weight of all that hop matter would stuff it into the holes and it would just stick there and not flow. So with this homemade system, gravity is your friend. You got the vibrating motor that's part of the football game, so that'll vibrate it. And you got the holes here, but unless you got gravity working with you so that the hops are going down, they're not gonna move so well. So the third variable was the physics of getting the right angle. So these fire bricks were originally around the 5-barrel boil kettle to hold the heat in. We had some extra ones. I kind of took different levels of fire bricks to get the angle of the step ladder perfect so that gravity would help with the flow of the hot pellets down the game and into the boiling beer for the full 90-minute boil. The eureka moment was really split in two. The first was actually dialing in the stream of hops so it flowed continually for the right 90 minutes. I would get up like every few minutes and add a little bit more pelletized hop to keep the level from getting too high or too low in the container. But first that worked, and then we kind of had to wait around for 3 weeks while 90-minute fermented, and we crashed it and cold aged it before we got to try the fruits of our labor. And then we were like, holy shit, continual hopping really works. So we went to brew our next one. I kind of remember the vibrating football game didn't vibrate so well. And then we went to brew the third one. By then the beer was on tap. People were loving it. They're like, you got to keep making this beer. You got to make it in bigger and bigger volumes. And we're like, okay, we went to brew the third one, and the vibrating machine didn't work at all. We took apart the little motor under there, and of course these systems were not designed to be steam ridden. And you gotta imagine when the beer is boiling, the whole room's steamy, there's steam coming up out of here. So that basically got in, contaminated the motor. So basically from that moment on, 90-minute quickly became our fastest growing beer in the history of Dogfish. And for about a year, until we MacGyvered the next machine, Sir Hopsalot, to be our continual hopping device, it basically meant that we had to let one brewer stand next to the boil kettle for the entire day that we were brewing, going, motherfucking Sam, stupid continual hopping idea, and adding the pinches by hand continually.
So about 23 years ago, my third day of work at Dogfish Head, and we were brewing the second ever large draft-only batch of 60-minute IPA. And they said, Bryan, you've heard of continual hopping, you need to do it by hand. And I said, say what now? And so what had happened was, in that brew house, there was a brick-clad kettle, and there was a cinder block wall right behind it, and spanning the distance between that cinder block wall and the brick cladding of the kettle and the opening of the kettle was just a piece of steel grating that we would sit on. So during the 60-minute boil of 60-minute IPA, I had to sit on a bucket right on top of the kettle, pretty much, with the opening right there at my feet. It was so fucking dangerous. I can't even begin to describe it to you. But during the course of the boil, mind you, we did not have any defoamer, so I was armed with a bucket of hops, a pint glass, which was probably not the right choice for that job either, and a hose to bat down any foam that would start coming up. So for 60 minutes, it was just take a scoop, dump a scoop. Take a scoop, dump a scoop, squirt it down. So the entire time I was sitting there, like Sam said, I was like, what the fuck? And I was like 27, I was like, what the hell have I gotten myself into? And here we are 23 years later. We've developed new shit to make this stuff happen, new equipment, safer methods of doing it, and you know what? It's now become iconic, and I feel blessed to have been part of that legacy.
So we're glad we invented this machine, which is now in the Smithsonian. And then we're so glad that our brewers put up with us until we invented the second generation of the machine.